All right, last tape, we were discussing Bandura's social learning theory, and his theory is still a learning theory, but unlike Skinner, or perhaps in answer to some of the objections to Skinner, he said that we don't only learn from direct reinforcement, but we also learn by observing our environment and being part of our environment. That was one thing. And that seems so obvious to people that was a constant criticism of Skinner. And he also said what the person brings to the environment is relevant. Skinner said, I really don't care about any emotions, any ideas, any thoughts, anything. I don't care. If I can manipulate the environment, I can get you to do what I want you to do. He said, no, bringing your attitudes and emotions make a difference. And to how you perceive the environment and the attitudes you have, and learning does not always mean behavior, because you can learn not to behave in a certain way, right? You can have a certain attitude about, oh boy, you know, I'm very interested in this class, I'm going to go, and then you find out the professor's boring and you don't care. I'm not taking that personally, and you turn yourself off, or you learn if I act in a certain way, there are going to be negative consequences, so I'm learning not to act. Okay, and therefore, what you will soon see happening is that a very important part of learning becomes the learning of attitudes and behaviors, and teaching is to inculcate proper attitudes and opinions. Let's stick to attitudes. And being careful that kids don't develop negative attitudes. He was one of the first big people to talk about that. And so let's go back to the triangle for 1 second. What he was saying is, unlike Skinner, who said the environment influences behavior, that's all that counts, he said the person counts too, person's attitudes, feelings, and emotions, right? And not only that, but the environment, it's not just that the environment affects the behaviors, the environment affects the person, but in turn, the person's attitude can have a dramatic effect on how the person perceives the environment. One person can see an environment as two people who can't do something. One can see it as an extremely frustrating experience. The other can see it as a challenging experience, right? Because they bring different attitudes and different abilities to the environment. So you get my picture now, right? And then also what the person brings to the environment can affect the person's behaviors, how you're going to act one way or act a different way. And finally, obviously, your behaviors and the consequences of your behaviors can affect how you feel. And the environment can, in turn, affect you. If you bring a negative attitude to a certain environment, I don't like this stuff, these people hate me, they're a pain in the neck, and they're nice to you, and they're wonderful to you, you can change your opinion about them, okay? And so he talked about learning by observing the environment and being influenced by the environment. And he talked about two kinds of learning: modeling, which is, when we did all this kind of crazy stuff, and you did it, and vicarious learning. So we're going to deal with modeling. And what Skinner says is that modeling is the process of learning by watching and repeating a behavior. You learn by watching others. That's how, who swing the golf club? You, I guess you're not here. Is that his name? Swing a golf club, that's how you learn to go like this. That's how we learn a lot of things. Okay, teachers will often give demonstrations. Okay, and then if a kid is doing something where you say, hey, watch how I do it. Okay? And this explains the learning of complex behaviors in one or a few trials. Right? We said that. You can just look and then do it. Something that has a multi-step process. And the process implies cognition because you have to remember, at least remembering, right? You remember what that was like and can do it now. You remembered that interacting with me, that if I call on you, all you're going to get is a rude and obnoxious answer. So you remember not to raise your hand, okay? And that implies cognition. Interestingly enough, so does reinforcement, but that's a different, more esoteric question, okay? And Skinner talked about modeling and what do you have to do to be a good model, okay? Now, interestingly enough, okay? Bandura, thank you. Bandura talked about that. Interestingly, or let me just say, all this stuff, I said that at the end of last class, be a role model, be a role model, be a role model, be a role model, be a good role model. This all comes from Bandura. to be a role model for your children. It's not so simple. But he said, and we went through these last time, there are 4 conditions of modeling. I'll just put them all up here. He said the first thing is you have to pay attention to the model. Okay, that's the first thing. You have to pay attention. You obviously can't model something you don't see. Or if you're trying to model somebody singing, you can't model something you can't hear. Right? So you have to be sure that people are paying attention. So already, and Bandura and information processing people, I might add, talked a lot about attention, the nature of attention. How do you pay attention? What causes the attention to be paid, and then a lapse in attention. Attention is a very interesting and often difficult psychological problem. Right? And to say, oh, this kid's not paying attention, attention deficit disorder, he has a can't pay attention disease, on we go. No. And he talked about various aspects of attention. He said physiology was only one of them, right? For instance, we can see at the bottom, motivation. If you don't care, you're not going to pay attention. If it's too hard for you, you're not going to pay attention. And ultimately, we're going to see later, you're not going to pay attention to something that's going to tell you you're a failure. Here, pay attention to this. Watch what I'm doing. You'll be able to do it. And you pay attention over and over, and every time you try to model it, you fail. You're going to stop paying attention to it. Okay? Bandura was the first one. Well, it's one of the first ones to tell us that, right? Other theories tell us that too. Piaget's theory tells us that too. But so attention is complex. And to say, well, the kid won't pay attention, well, that's because the kid has attention deficit disorder, not because I'm frustrating the kid, not because I'm boring the kid. That's another time you won't pay attention. Most of you, if I started to give them a lesson now on how to multiply the ones, one single-digit numbers, would pretty soon stop paying attention. I don't need a lesson on how to multiply 5 times 7. Okay, especially since I brought my calculator. Okay, give me a break. Okay. If I began giving you attention, most of you, if I began giving you a lesson about how to have neat handwriting, most of you wouldn't pay attention. Some of you because you have neat. How many people wouldn't pay attention because your handwriting's pretty good, you don't need any lessons from me? And how many wouldn't pay attention because people bugged you about that for years and years and you gave up? And my hand's up here, okay? So most of you wouldn't pay attention. It could be for different reasons. How many people would pay attention? If I got an expert up here on how to prove your handwriting, how many people would pay attention? Yeah, so we got about 4 or 5 people in here out of 20-some or 30. And you can, those of you watching on one of the various electronic means, you can decide for yourself. So there would be some people who would pay attention, some who wouldn't pay attention because they know how to do it already, and someone who wouldn't pay attention because they've given up already. Okay, I've given up. So you have to, right? And so attention is a very difficult thing, and getting kids to pay attention is not always easy, and just standing there and looking is not paying attention. Matter of fact, in fact, it means we used to have a faculty meetings. There was somebody I would, you usually take the same seat. I would sit across from him. He could keep his eyes open and be looking right at the person. It was sort of like this. If he's looking there, I could see his eyes, and I could tell when he was shutting down, right? You get a certain look in his eyes. He was zoning out, right? And he was looking. He would even nod once in a while. He wasn't paying attention, okay? So I have to be careful, right? I said to him, I'm jealous of you. I mean, you could actually ask him afterwards what was said, and he wouldn't know. He would tell me, I go to my happy place. And I've learned how to make external signs, and I'm in my happy place. He said, usually in the woods, right? Sitting somewhere watching the birds. So you have to be careful about that. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. The second thing is retention, okay? You have to find a way to remember what you saw, okay? And they use the word encode, which is an information processing word. Visual, you have to have visual or verbal representations of the model. I'm not going to go into this too much because we're going to cover this more extensively, when we talk about information processing. But let it be fair to say that if you model something and the person doesn't have the tools to remember what you've modeled, okay, if I say to you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you can't figure out a way, so I'll give you examples, right? People figured out very early that it's most of you can memorize a song much easier than you can memorize a poem, right? So we already go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's easier, right, to do it that way, right? People can remember poems. So I before E, except after C, and was sounded as A, and neighbor and way. You memorized that long before you even knew what it was talking about. Okay? So there are certain, but we'll get to that more extensively when we get to information processing. Finally, there's motor reproduction. Okay? The ability to actually do what you've modeled. So I can watch Tiger Woods. Daniel probably, who likes golf, would probably watch Tiger Woods forever, but probably, it's fair to say you probably won't get that good in golf. He's giving me a nasty look. Yeah, it's correct. He's smiling. No. Okay, so now it is possible that by watching good golfers, probably the rest of us even wouldn't know what we're watching, but someone who plays golf and who watches good golfers might learn something from watching them. But in the end, I can watch a great basketball player all I want. I'm not going to be able to do it, right? I can't, you know, there's certain physical limitations to certain things, and sometimes there are other kinds of limitations. So you have to be, but this, he's talking about motor limitations. You have to be, if it's a motor model, you have to be able to do it. Okay, interestingly enough, when I asked about the bad handwriting, who's given up because of the handwriting, 2/3 of the people who raised their hands were males. Okay, and very often for reasons that it's been recognized a long time, and I don't want to go into it, and I only know a little bit about it, but the neurological, physiological development of boys is slower than that of girls. Okay, so the fine motor skills that you need, and by the way, everyone here who said I had great handwriting, everyone was a woman. There was one male in this room who raised his hand. Okay, and we have about 5, 6, there are a lot more women here, but that's typical. The fine motor skills that you need to form the letters properly and correctly, many, many boys do not have them. Is there any male here who has good handwriting, really good handwriting? No. My father did, right? But I mean, he was really good. He's a lithographer, right? And he remembers from the time he was a kid. So there obviously are, but on the average, there are many more boys who don't have the fine motor skills to produce the letters properly than there are girls, let's say at 5 years old or 6 years old, or certainly at 5 years old. There's some girls who don't and some boys who do, but on the average. And so they just can't. Those kids who don't have it, they just can't. That's why the handwriting's a mess. Okay, and finally, of course, we have motivation. You have to want to do it. We were talking before about, tell me your name again? Dane. Go ahead.
Dane.
Dane was talking about sports. What did you say you would rather do than watch a sports event?
Watch potatoes dry out.
Yeah, watch potatoes dry out. So if I'm going to do a demonstration, right, and I hold his hand and I put him on pills so that he's up and I hold his head and he's watching of some sporting event, he's not going to be terribly interested in it. He's not motivated to learn it, okay? And so kids can get turned off to things and turned on to things. And, of course, motivation, you'll notice, is also a mental state. Are you motivated to do it? Or are you unmotivated to do it? Okay, for years, I used to cry in art class. I was the youngest kid in the class. I just didn't have the fine motor skills, and it was awful. It was painful for me. And you give me something to draw, and I didn't even want to look at it, do it. Finally, we had somebody in art ed here. He said, stop being a dope, I'll show you. Years ago, he said, I'll show you some basic principles. We'll be able to do something other than straight lines. So he showed me some things, but it took a while for him to overcome and I'm still, right? How many people here are absolutely, positively convinced that there is absolutely no way that you would be able to learn to draw a picture of the person next to you so we know who the person is, because you just don't have the talent? Yeah, it's most of it's 2/3, it's about half, maybe a little more than half of the room raised their hands. They've been turned off. I'm telling you, I could give you a long lecture on how that's just not true, right? That's a developmental ability that's been cut off, but people don't want to hear it. I've lost motivation. By the way, I'm convinced of that too, even though I read the theories, okay? So, all right. So we're going to talk about types of models, things we can model. And Bandura had a profound effect on American society and much of the debate in American society because he talked about modeling. First, there's obviously a live person, a real person, the presence of the observer, and teachers do this a lot. And kids do this to one another a lot. You watch somebody else doing something and you do it, okay? And we'll talk about reinforcement. Often the person's rewarded for it. You say, oh, maybe I'll do it too, but we'll get to that. But there are other kinds of models. There are symbolic models. An image of a real person, TV movies, or a character, Superman, Harry Potter, okay? And these are Skinner's famous Bobo doll experiments. Okay, come back to me now. Does anyone does anyone know what a Bobo doll is? How do you know? Took the course already? Go ahead, tell us.
I've taken a course previous to this. And
Go ahead. What's a Bobo doll?
It's the inflatable doll that you hit and it bounces back up.
Right? Is that what you thought it was? Yeah. Now, a Bobo doll, that's what he called it, a Bobo doll. It's probably what it was called in his day. You know, it's those big inflatable dolls. At the bottom is a big weight. So you hit the thing and it goes down and it pops back up, right? Hit it and it pops back up. So Skinner did his famous experiments with a, thank you very much. If I say Skinner, make me stop. Bandura did his famous experiments with a Bobo doll, talking about watching models be aggressive. He is the person who was behind the campaign against violent television. He's not behind it, but he is the one who started this campaign against children watching violence, violent movies, then violent television, and now violent video games. And I'm going to stand up and I'll show you what happened in the Bobo doll experiment, okay? The doll's here, okay? And you have, I'm going to walk over here. Is that okay? The doll's, can you get the, you got to get the camera on me. Okay, the doll's here and it's standing here, and the kid's in the room with things to do. Okay, the kid's in the room with things to do. And one of the things to do is to hit the Bobo doll. Okay, and so they get a baseline of how many times the kid will come and hit the Bobo doll. You know, bang, hit it, right? Then the kid watched a movie of an adult going in and going bang, 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 hit that doll, hit that doll, hit that doll. After the kids who watched the movies came in, they were much more, quote unquote, aggressive toward the doll. They would come in and instead of the doll being one of the things to do, or hitting the doll, I don't know, I'm making up the numbers, 3 times in 5 minutes, or going around and hitting it periodically, they'd stand there and go bang, 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 hitting the doll. Okay? So they just watched violence, what Bandura called violence, and they became much more violent themselves. Of course, he called this violence. Interestingly enough, he tried it 2 other ways and got some interesting results. First, he showed a film, and the adult goes in and hits the doll, hits what he called a Bobo doll, hit the doll, the doll's hit it and it comes back up and hit it again. And another adult came in and said, "Stop doing that." Quote unquote, punished it. Punished behavior. "Stop doing that. That's a bad thing to do. You should not hit that. You should not hit other things or people or things." Right? And after that, the kids' amount of violence or hitting went way down. Much less than they'd originally done. They wouldn't do it anymore. Very few. Then he did it the other way. He had adults come in. You saw an adult hitting the doll, and then another adult came in, and sometimes he had children doing it. Okay, they watched other children hitting the doll too, and an adult would come in and say, "That's good, hit it again, that's great, hit it again, hit it again, hit it again." As you would expect, there was more violence, more hitting of the doll than when the kid was left alone, but not much. So in other words, let me say it again. There was more hitting than when the kid just watched someone else hit the doll with no comment, but not much more. So in other words, the kids who just watched the hitting of the doll with no one making a comment, they just watched it, hit the doll almost as many times afterwards as the kids who watched the film where the person hitting the doll was told that's a good thing to do. Here, let me draw it for you. So in other words, let's say this is the number of times the person would hit the doll. Okay, so the kids who saw the adult being chastised, right, there was almost no hitting afterwards. This is the amount that they hit. The kids who just saw the film, this is the chastised hitter. Chastised for being hit. This is just watching. There was this much violence, just watching. And when the kids who saw praise for the hitting, There was maybe this much. A little bit more. His point was that just watching the hitting of the doll caused the kids to be much more aggressive toward the doll. They just modeled. They didn't hear anybody say anything. There were no punishments. There were no reinforcements. Like here there's a punishment for hitting, right? And here there's a punishment for hitting, and here's basically there's a reinforcement for hitting. Here, nothing. And there's still an enormous amount of extra hitting. And let's say this was the average amount that the kids would hit, right? This was the average just left alone. This is just no film condition. There was much, much more. So, come back to me for a second. So Bandura concluded that just watching violence makes kids more violent. Okay? A while ago, right, I don't know how long this tape is going to run, but there was a case, I don't know if you remember by the time the case ran, but there was a case of a 12-year-old boy, 11-year-old boy, killing a little girl because he claims he was practicing wrestling holds he saw on TV. It was really famous because he was 11, I think he was 11 years old. He was convicted of second-degree murder as an adult. Finally, somebody said, "Wait a minute, I don't think so. Let's." They retried him, and they whatever sentence it was, so he can get some intensive therapy. But Bandura would say, "See, I told you. Watching violence makes a difference." Interestingly enough, there's been some. Lately, there have been. Afterwards, there were some looking at the nature of these symbolic models. And it turned out the more real the symbolic model was, the more the kids were likely to imitate it and take it for something real. So, for instance, if you saw a TV show with real people, like a drama, and real people would go out and do real things on a real street, including violence, right? Kids were much more likely to imitate that than, say, something from Harry Potter. Right, that they know is a magic fantasy world on the Star Wars. And likewise, cartoons, they were not likely. And we see Road Runner and Coyote cartoons. That coyote dies 12 times a cartoon, right? Over the cliff, bang in the air. Kids knew that wasn't real. Or people getting run over by, or Tom and Jerry cartoons, where Tom is always getting electrocuted and run over by steamrollers. And one time he was run over by a steamroller, and he's flat as a pancake, and he blows into his thumb, and he pops up again. They know that that's not real. They tend to imitate that less. It tends to be less of a model for real behavior for real people. So in some ways, by the way, that was used as a defense by some people with the video games. But the more realistic the video games get, the more people were opposed to them. And people talk about being immune to violence and seeing violence all the time. But Bandura is the person who started this whole question of whether watching violence makes you more violent. Interestingly enough, when we get to Freud, you'll see Freud disagrees with him completely. Freud says it's simply not true. People who are violent, if they can watch, who have the violent tendencies, if they can watch the violence in another way, it lets off what he calls cathartic energy. It's a catharsis. It lets off this energy that's geared toward it can be, right? And people try to do it. So, for instance, you will find that men who commit violent crimes against women, their rooms are full of magazines, pornography about that, right? Bandura says, "See, I told you so. They're imitating it," right? Freud said, "I don't think so." Freud said, what's happening is that they realize it's a wrong thing to do, and they're trying to let off this energy in other socially more acceptable ways, right? By reading about it, by looking films about it, by doing something, but they just can't control themselves in the end. So you have to pay your money, takes your choice. But it's pretty clear that kids who see violence often will tend to act more violent. I'll tell you a personal story. My son goes to my grandson, who at the time I'm making this tape is 20 months old. All of a sudden, he's toddling along, and he toddles along like this, right? Can you see me here? Am I on there? And he goes, all of a sudden, he goes like this. Hi-ya! kicks his foot, right? He's 21, so he saw some kid doing that in the nursery school where he goes. You know, it's a karate move. You know, my daughter-in-law went nuts. You're not supposed to do that. Let's see you march instead. My son said, no, we don't do high. I mean, it's a violent move. He doesn't know what it means, but he's already imitating this violent move. So he said, you have to be very, very careful about doing things. I remember when my uncle taught me how to drive. He said, do what I say, not what I do. He helped to teach me how to drive, right? So, of course, he rolled through a stop sign, and so do I, right? So, you can't tell that to people, right? You have to be very careful. Well, I should say until I got the ticket for rolling through them. Now I try not to, right? Okay. And finally, let's go back here. Of course, we can also model written instructions or descriptions of how to act. And sometimes we can have both. Like, for instance, we can have a map to tell us how to get somewhere, which is actually a symbolic. It's an image. Or we can have written instructions. And once again, let me just observe you a little. You got to be careful about these things because different people have different things. How many people? I'm going to give you either a map of how to get from one place to another or written instructions. You can't have both. Who would take the map? Who would take the written instructions? More people here would take the written instructions. So would I, by the way. So it depends, right? And so different people can learn by different kinds of models and different things they see. Okay? Some people, I really learn best. If I were to take this course, I'd probably try to make it in a live thing. I just do better with live people, interacting with live people. Of course, as you can tell, I have a big mouth. I would probably be asking questions, too. So you have to be careful about that, what kind of models kids can go for. Okay, now, these are the characteristics of an effective model. And you have to be careful of this. Because as a teacher, you're supposed to model things for kids, supposed to be an effective model. But you got to be careful about some of these things. First, competence. An effective model has to be perceived by the observer to be competent in what the model is doing. Okay? So, if I were going to say, come here, I'll show you how to throw free throws, people would probably very quickly stop paying attention to me. Okay, all they have to do is see me throw two of them and they realize it's ridiculous, right? They might want to watch Kelvin Murphy instead. Or who's the one now who's making all the free throws? You remember, right? You might want to watch someone who knows how to do it. Okay, that doesn't mean you have to know everything. If you try to bluff your way through, when the teacher, was nasty to me, that lowered, in my eyes, her esteem or her competence, right? If you don't know something, right, then say, I don't know, or I got to check. When Francis and I had that little debate about variable interview, I said, she's right. I was wrong. I got to go back. But I know that this stuff, and I had to add the condition that you have to hit it once. I didn't know it. I'd messed something up. And if you go back and say, I'll look, I'm not sure, that can often increase your confidence, especially as kids get older. Trying to bluff people. If you try to bluff people or ridicule them when you don't know something, it decreases your confidence. But in the end, it's okay to say, I'm competent with this and not competent with that. And to say so, it's okay. Okay, so you can, then people will say, I believe that you're competent. But so people have to think you're competent and know what you're doing and think you know what you're doing. And it's very interesting that often kids will get senses of a lack of competence. And, you can tell that I have questions about the competence of certain people, competence of certain people who function in the schools. Often, when I hear people tell me, look, I know that these tests are, but I'm in there and I got to do this and this right away. Because of my own attitudes, I feel them to be much more competent. So you have to look at that and what it means to be competent, what a model is competent. By the way, I don't know how to do this. I don't know where it came from. And when I tried to get rid of it, the slide turned inside out. So I don't know what it's doing there, that little thing. But there it is. Okay. Often you'll model people who have prestige and power. Okay. There's an overwhelming urge to try to model yourself after Tiger Woods rather than after the local golf pro, right? Even though in your head I could probably learn more from that golf pro than from the guy who's the best in the world. Okay? Most people, when you're learning how to bat, will tell you, don't look at the greats. Because usually there's something weird about them, right? Jackie Robinson. Does everybody know who Jackie Robinson was? Yeah, y'all know who he was because he was the guy who broke what they used to call the color barrier. He was the first black player to play in the major leagues. Come back to me for a second. But Jackie Robinson was a great baseball player. That's why they picked him, because they knew he would succeed. He was a phenomenal baseball player. If he had been... Baseball, stealing bases was just not the thing to do. He led the major leagues every year stealing bases, 20, 25. If he were playing in the great base stealing days, he would have stolen 200 bases. He was a great player. Okay? And Jackie Robinson, when he was batting, I got to show you this, right? He looked like he was swatting flies. Okay? His batting stance was like this. He was up like this, way up in the air, right? If you try to model, if the average person trying to model yourself after Jackie Robinson is making a mistake, right? He's so good that he can go beyond the rules and find something idiosyncratic that works idiosyncratically well. Just for him, that works well because he was such a great athlete. He was an Olympic level track star, and he was an All-American halfback. I mean, the guy was a great, great athlete. Well, modeling him is probably, if you're in the Little League, you're probably better off to model the coach who played baseball in college, and that was it. But because there's prestige, because we tend to model people who have prestige, okay? And the opposite is is often true. This guy's a jerk. What does he know? Today's a he day, right? What does he know? What does she know? I'm not going to do it. So that's why people often tell you it's important for you to have an interaction with the kids where they feel that there's something prestigious about you and they have a sense that school's important. Okay? The next thing is gender appropriate behavior. This isn't in here from the old days, but especially younger kids will often tend to model the same gender to get the appropriate behaviors. Especially when they come to realize that gender makes a difference. I was talking with my, he has a pretty good vocabulary. He's 21 months old, my grandson. Okay. Is daddy a boy or a girl? Boy. What about mommy? Boy. No, mommy's a girl. Girl. What about Uncle Joe? Girl. What about Aunt Jacqueline? Girl, boy, girl. He doesn't know. No, Aunt Jacqueline's a girl. Uncle Joe's a boy. What about Uncle Joe? Boy. Aunt Jacqueline. Boy. He doesn't get it. Doesn't get it. Kids will, and even when kids will often tell you, 3-year-olds, you'll ask them, well, again, this is part of Piaget, could you be, to ask a little boy, could you be a woman when you grow up? You say, oh, sure. Tell me how. Then they start to, whatever their stereotypic image is. Oh, well, I could put on lipstick and wear a dress and grow my hair very long. Right? I'd be a woman. You ask a girl, could you be a man and go, yeah, I'll wear a suit and a tie and whatever they think it is, right? So, but once they begin to get a sense that there's gender and that there's gender appropriateness, and often in particular with adolescents who are very gender role stereotyped, right? I remember one time, I'm walking, I have a million different books here. Let me get up again. I have a million different books. See if you can get this on me, right? And I'm carrying them like this. Hello? Can you get the, yeah. I'm carrying them like this, and all the guys came, this must have been 8th grade. What are you, a girl? Because girls carry books like this. Boys carry books like this. Right? That was when I was there, right? Look at your nails. Boys look like this, girls look like this, right? On and on. Things you can wear and you can't wear and you can do, right? So often you'll model the people who are from the same gender, and you have to be careful of that. So let me tell you something. If you're a middle school teacher, a female middle school teacher, right, 13, 14-year-old boys, and you think they view you as a proper role model for all kinds of social behaviors, think again. Not too likely. Not too likely. Often, people will model the coach. Boys will model the coach because he has prestige and power. Or girls will model the female coach if it's a school where women's athletics is, because she has prestige. It's not power, prestige, right? They often model the teacher who has the prestige. So if you're in a school that emphasizes a lot of academic stuff, and you find, oh, this person used to be a college professor before he came to teach at this place, or he won 18 science awards before he came to teach here, you might model that person because, oh, it's prestige in your eyes. Okay? Relevance. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Again, we're back to the thing is, I'm not too likely to model someone who's going to show how to weld. I don't want to get burned. I don't like fire. I don't care about welding. If I need welding, I'll call my contractor and he'll weld it. I don't care. So it has to be relevant. And that, of course, is back to motivation, back to interest, back to the whole thing. Okay? And so, once again, if you have a kid who says, what do I need this for? You often hear that. How many people, when you were studying plane geometry, were thinking, what do I, or intermediate algebra, what do I need this for? My hand's up, right? So if you say, you're not going to get into college, how many people heard that? Got to have this to get into college. You heard that, right? Okay, so it becomes relevant. But it becomes relevant in a way. I remember when I took German in college, you had to have a language. Figured I'll take German. There were reasons that I did it that had to do with trying to learn Yiddish. Never mind. So I took the German. Oh, it didn't do so hot. So I remember I walked out of the, Bob Gwelly and I walked out together. He was taking second year German. He really was tortured because he'd taken first year. And I said, come on, we're going to go out to the field. He went and he drop kicked his German books into the woods. That was and I went there and I said, I'm starting from my toes and I'm pushing it all up and I'm getting out and I blew all the German out of my head. Especially since I thought I didn't do too well on the exam. I did all right, it turned out, but right, it just wasn't relevant to me. I had taken it for a specific reason. I thought I could use it to help me learn Yiddish, which is a Germanic language. It didn't work out too well, and I didn't care too much anymore after that. So I did it because I had to graduate from college, and but I hardly remember any of it anymore. Hardly remember any of it. So, because I didn't care. And most of you, if I were to give you an intermediate algebra test today, how many people took intermediate algebra? How many of you could get higher than a 30 on the test? One math, are you going to be a math teacher? Right? Maybe a few. Right? Most of you, some people, you liked it, didn't you? So how can you do so well on the test? Push it down.
I have a good memory.
Yeah, we'll see. How long ago did you take it?
8th grade was my first algebra course.
No, I'm talking about intermediate algebra. Second algebra course in high school.
Oh, Algebra 2 I took
Algebra
in
2.
junior year.
Here?
No, junior year in
Junior
high school. Yeah.
I'll bring you an exam, we'll see. See if I can find one. And finally, let's look here. Identification with a model. The observer has to view the model as being similar to her or himself in a relevant way. Okay? I have to tell you, a lot of bad stuff has gone on with this thing. Okay, come back to me for a second. You are not allowed to impose on people. You're allowed to do it. You're just going to make a mistake. What's relevant or not relevant? Okay? A lot of the stuff about finding, for instance, we're going to find people, we're going to have to find black teachers for black kids, Hispanic teachers, so they have a model they see as being the same as themselves, relevant to them. Well, you have to be careful. One of my sons had a thing for Darryl Strawberry. He loved Darryl Strawberry with all his heart and soul. Some of you are too young to remember, but Darryl Strawberry was a baseball player, and he played for the Mets for many years. He was very tall and very thin. And he got to be one of these guys that everybody teased. So one day we have seats out in right field, and the Astros are playing the Mets, and he was the right fielder, and people start going, Darryl, Darryl. That's all. You would hear that all over. People usually shut people up with a swing of the bat, right? He was a very good player. There, and then they called him String Bean, Bean Pole. He was very tall and thin. That day, after he hit the first home run, about half the people kept it up and the other half shut up. After he hit the second home run, everybody shut up. And every time he hit a home run, my son would sit on the seat with his head down. He would put his feet on the chair with his head down, and he was smiling. I had my other two sons there who would have killed him because he was the youngest of the three, and they, especially the oldest one, was a fanatic Astros fan. One day I asked him, why do you love Darryl Strawberry so much? We had to get him a Mets jacket, everything. Why do you love Darryl Strawberry? He said, because he's just like me. I said, how? And I knew how. Because my son was, and he still is, tall and skinny. Yeah, don't ask, right? Tall and skinny, and everybody picked on him for it. It wasn't but he would be called String Bean or Bean Pole or stuff like that, right? He was much taller than the kids in his class. Now it's, oh, look how nice and tall he is. You know? And he turned out to be 6'3". He's not, a giant, but he was very tall. And he got picked on, and he saw Darryl Strawberry just like him. The fact that Darryl Strawberry was black and he was white, it was completely irrelevant to him. But skin color was completely irrelevant. Huh? I mean, it didn't even enter his head. He was 10 years old. Okay, that was his model. I saw him play Little League. He would try to bat like Darryl Strawberry. Right? I think Darryl Strawberry was a lefty, wasn't he? Yeah, and my son was a lefty too. He would try to model as he couldn't hit worth a darn that way, right? But he would try to be just like the. When they traded Darryl Strawberry off the Mets, he stopped with that Mets jacket hood stood right in the center of his closet. When he went to college, he couldn't take it. He couldn't wear it because I think Strawberry was traded to the Dodgers, right? And he couldn't. When he moved on college and he found out, I said, Jerry, you want to take the Mets jacket? No. He couldn't wear it because they had betrayed Darryl Strawberry by saying, but he couldn't get rid of it. To this day, it finally, when we moved out of that house, it's still in his pack of stuff. I said, let me give it away. No, just keep it, right? It was already almost 30, right? No, just keep it. Because he had this, even after that, he had this, after that's long gone, there are plenty of people his height now, but there's still this, how he identified with people. You have to be very careful about who's a model and who's not. It is not true that you cannot have opposite gender models. Okay? My model for history was my 11th grade history teacher, Miss Love, who taught me that you got to be critical about history. You have to be able to back up what you say. You have to look at differing opinions. It really turned me on to this stuff. My parents were typical immigrant yellow dog Democrats, or the children of immigrant yellow dog Democrats. And so we had to do a thing about Roosevelt, and I wrote how Roosevelt was wonderful. I was in 11th grade, and Hoover was horrible, and she tore up the paper and said, what about this? What about that? What about this? She gave me a speech of Roosevelt's to read, one of his campaign speeches, which sounded just like Hoover. And I said, something, I got to look into this. And ever after that, she's one of the reasons why when people tell me something is the given truth, I said, I got to think about this. Right? She really taught me a lot. So it's not always true. And you have to be careful about this identification with models, assuming all blacks identify with blacks and whites with whites, and greens with greens. Be careful. As a matter of fact, the great mind behind the integration movement, the great philosopher, was W.E.B., I think. Yeah, W.E.B. Du Bois. I know he's supposed to say it in Dubois, but he pronounced it Du Bois, right? Come back to me for a second. Within what was called the Negro community, there was a great debate about which way to go. Okay, one was Booker T. Washington, who said, look, let's build our own community. Let's build our own institutions. Let's make our own colleges. Let's make our own universities. Let's make our own industries, our own businesses. And once we come with intellectual, economic, and ultimately political strength, although political strength was very difficult in the South, where blacks basically were not allowed to vote, said, then we can you know, then we can come and integrate, and then we can ask for our rightful place in society. And that was behind, for instance, he formed Tuskegee College, behind the what we call the traditionally black colleges, Fitch and Tuskegee and Grambling, that were all and in insistence at a very high level. I mean, those are all traditionally very high quality colleges and institutions of higher learning, and the United Negro College Fund is basically back in the to find high-level achieving black students who were discriminated against in other colleges to go to these colleges, etc. The other was W.B. Du Bois, who said he was the mind behind the integration movement, who said baloney. Said baloney. We're Americans like everybody else, and we have a right to the institutions right now. We need to ask for integration now. And these were two brilliant minds, right? And W.E. Du Bois, if you ever read his stuff, the guy he had a brilliant mind, a brilliant mind. He wrote about a lot of stuff. And he wrote an essay once that I read. He said, when I read Aristotle, right, he said, my spirit lifts out of my body. Right? It was amazing. I mean, he wrote this much better than I'm saying it. And I connect with the spirit of Aristotle, and we spiritually hold hands, and I learn from him, I model from him, et cetera, et cetera. So he's saying, look, I'm not interested. I mean, I'm not interested in what's Aristotle looked like or what his ethnic background was. If I see someone who has something to teach me, I'm going to model that person. I don't care about the other stuff. And this is the person who is the brains behind the civil rights movement. Right? The initial, the integrated, the seminal mind behind the civil rights movement, right? So you have to be very careful about these things. You have to be careful about saying, oh, women only model women and men and this and that kind of stuff. And it's insulting in a way. It's insulting, okay? You have to have Italian Americans, you have to have Italian American teachers. I mean, please. So watch out for that kind of stuff. And kids will often identify very strongly for other reasons. I had one kid, I taught in a, one of my first public school teaching job was in a school with kids who were mostly from Puerto Rico. And I had one kid, no one else could work with this kid. And this kid loved me and would model me and would sit with me because he was a fanatic, 4th or 5th grade, a fanatic baseball fan. And he found out that I love baseball too. I loved it a lot more than I do now, so you can imagine. And we would follow and do that. Eventually, I taught him a lot of add and subtract. We even almost got the percentages because he wanted to know how batting averages were figured. It was a little tough for him, but he stuck to it. So he was ready to model what I did and to see me as a model because of something that nobody else could think about, baseball. And the other teachers wanted nothing to do with them, right? We even had a few teachers from Puerto Rican background. He couldn't care less. It was baseball. That's what he cared about. So be careful about this, and be careful sometimes you're just not going to be a model for people because that's just how it is, right? Kid doesn't see you as being relevant for this, right? Like if Dane, right? If Dane's my teacher, he's the one who said he'd rather watch potatoes dry out, and I love baseball, and he's teaching me a lesson on American sports because it's in the lesson book. Well, I'm probably not going to pay too much attention. I love sports. If I'm an 8th grade kid, right? You know, I'm not going to listen to him. No, somebody else I might listen to. All right, so be careful about all that. There's another. The other thing that let's go back to the PowerPoint that Bandura talks about is vicarious. Vicarious means through others, right? Doing it not by yourself, but through others, vicarious learning, through reinforcement and punishment. Okay? The learner watches the consequence of behavior engaged in by others, and this influences his or her behavior. Okay? Let me show you this. Whose favorite color is red? Whose favorite color is blue? Blue. Okay, ready? Let me borrow this. Let me borrow that. Yeah, I'll borrow this. That's fine. What's your favorite color? Blue. Bang! Smash her over the head. What's your favorite color? Wait. What's your favorite color? Try it again. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Smash her over the head. What's your favorite color?
Pink.
Oh, that's very nice. You all have to tell the truth. What's your favorite color?
Pink.
Very good. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Bang! Smash him over the head. Who else's favorite color is blue? Nobody. Yeah, we got one person, right? Oh. Pretty soon, I had 6 hands up before, and I only have 1. Right? She thinks I'm not ready to walk that far to smash her over the head. It's on the other side of the room. Okay. All of a sudden, thank you very much. Here, I'll clean up the blood. There you go. All right. All of a sudden, by watching someone else be punished for that, your behavior changes. Whose favorite color is green? Okay. What's your favorite color?
Green.
Oh, that's good. Here's $100. What's your favorite color?
Purple.
That's nice. What's your favorite color?
It's green now.
Oh, here's $100. What's your favorite color?
Green.
She said pink a little while ago, right? You see? Okay, right here. I have to write an IOU amount of money, right? Okay, you understand? So this is what Bandura calls vicarious punishment and reinforcement. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, you learn the consequences of behaviors engaged by others, and this influences your behavior in the future. So all of a sudden, the person whose favorite color was pink sees reinforcements for green, and it's green. All of a sudden, that's a behavior saying green is green. All of a sudden, all the people's favorite color was blue. It stopped being blue, right? Unless you enjoy concussions, right? So this is what he calls vicarious reinforcement and learning. The person can decide to act or not to act, not to say blue, based upon the consequences of what happens to others. Okay? And by the way, this can also be true about people's watching others succeed or fail. Let me give you an example right here from class. Come back to me. Okay, remind me your name again. This is awful. Rosanna. Okay? Rosanna was the person who said she thinks that she could still do well in Algebra 2. From this, I'm going to conclude she's probably pretty good in math. If somebody puts out a math problem and gives it to Rosanna to do, and she can't do it, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm probably not going to try myself. If I had more, I might say, oh, let me see, maybe Rosanna's not. Were you good in math? Yeah, she's going like this, yeah. If I actually saw her solve a bunch of math problems that I had trouble with, and then they gave one that she couldn't do, I'd give up right away. Right? So by watching the consequence, by watching her failure, and having a self-evaluation of how good I am in math, which is okay, but she's better than okay. So if a person who's better than okay can't do it, I certainly can't do it. Okay? So by watching her fail, I've already determined I'm going to fail. There's no point in trying. Or it can be the other way around. Okay? Let's say I'm really no good in math, but...
Deneen.
Again?
Deneen.
But Deneen is my saving grace. She's the only person in the grade who's worse at math than I am. Right? That's why we're buddies. Okay? We're the two math dunces in the class. Okay? Now we have something in pre-algebra. Let's say it's 7th grade. Okay? We have something. Were you good in math? I picked on the wrong person. She said, yeah. Well, I have to pretend. Okay? If I see Deneen try a problem and do it, I can say, you know something? If Deneen can do it, I'll bet I can do it. So the same problem, if I see Rosanna, right? If I see Rosanna not be able to do it, I probably give up immediately. If I see Deneen do it, I'd say, oh, let me give it a shot. You see what I'm saying? So, and this is all by watching others succeed and fail, I make a determination about whether or not I can succeed or fail. Right? And that'll happen to kids a lot. And often kids, right, will make those determinations, right, based upon their own previous experience with success and failure, and you've got to watch that out. Often kids will not try if they see other people not being able to do it. Because, well, I'm not as good as they are. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Thus, oh, that's a nice effect. I didn't even know how I did it. Thus, whew, clearly, cognitive processes are implied since we remember what we saw and decide how to act in the future in the same situation. Okay? You remember that you're going to get a concussion if you say green. Blue. So you decide, I'm never going to say blue. You remember you're going to get $100 if you say green, so you'll say green if your favorite color is pink. We also draw conclusions about our own abilities by watching others. So behavior is not the same as learning. For Skinner, learning and behavior, see if you get my picture in there, are synonyms. I once watched one of these things without the picture, and I couldn't pay attention, so now I'm a semi-fanatic about it. Learning means behaving, but Bandura says, I don't think so. Because you can decide to behave or not behave based on what you've seen. Whose favorite color is blue? Or we're going to just sit there and not say one thing, because you don't want to get smashed in the head. Whose favorite color is green? Everybody's hand's going to go up, right? Because there's a chance to make $100. Okay? So you can learn to behave and not to behave. You can even learn to differentially behave. You can learn that, well, sometimes he'll give $100, sometimes he won't, and try to figure out when he will and won't. Okay? Okay, so here's a little summary. Modeling is learning through observation. The importance of modeling is that it teaches new behaviors. And vicarious experiences, people's abilities and their beliefs and abilities are influenced by watching others succeed and fail, and by watching others being reinforced and not reinforced. And this makes Bandura's theory more efficient than Skinner's. I'll give you an example. If I want to say, look, anyone who says the word blue in this school, right, terrible things happen. It sends out vibrations and shakes the foundation of the school. I would have to, according to Skinner, I have to go around and set up contingencies to teach each one of you not to say blue. Each one of you out there in the camera, here, I just smashed two, 3 people on the head and nobody says blue ever again, right? If I want to teach you to say please after somebody gives you something, I'd have to teach each one of you, every 6-year-old I have here, or 4-year-old I have here, I'd have to reward you for saying please, says Skinner. Bandura would say, oh no. Whoever says please gets a candy bar. Before you know it, everybody's going to be saying please if you want the candy bar, right? Or gets $100, everybody's going to be saying please. I can teach one person, and by having other people observe, teach everybody. It's much more efficient. Not only that, I don't have to reinforce each person individually. I can model something and everybody will learn it by watching me. It's great. It's very efficient. So this is what drew people to Bandura's theory. Okay, and one other thing, and that's self-efficacy. I'll put it here and we'll talk about it. Children's feelings about their abilities are a better predictor of success than are their actual abilities. I'm going to say this once again, at least. Children's feeling about their abilities are better predictors of success than are their actual abilities. Okay? Come back to me and I'll explain that to you. Okay? Get the camera. Okay. Here's what happened. Here's what's happened in this class. I have in this class Here's how I actually allowed people to sign up for the sections. The people who are taking this by buying CDs or tapes, all of them, let me just do it regularly. Everyone who is taking this class by all modes, right? Let me try once more. Okay? I have two groups of people. Be easy that way. Group A are the people in this room, right? And Group B are the people taking the class by tape. Now, I've winnowed this down from thousands of people. Group A, the people sitting in this room, their math abilities by standardized tests, teacher evaluations, and anything else I can do are worse than the math abilities of the people in Group B, the people taking this by tape or by TV, right? However, I've selected the people in this room based on the fact their math ability isn't good, but they all say, I'm pretty good in math. I can do it. The people in Group B, the people watching on the tapes, their actual math ability is better than the people sitting in this room, but they all have the attitude, I suck at math. I can't do this stuff. Right? By every indication, they're better in math, but they think they're terrible in math. If I now go to give a math lesson about something that's new for both groups, and I test it afterwards, both however you want, with a standardized test or with actually seeing what people understand, the people who think they're good in math, even though their skills are lower initially, will do better than the people who think I suck in math. The people whose skills are low, but attitude is good, self-efficacy, I'm good at it, I'm good, will do better than the people whose skills are higher but think I'm no good. They have a low, what Bandura calls self-efficacy. Efficacious means you're good at something, okay? Do you understand what I'm saying? So if, like, at 5 o'clock, driving through the city streets is a more efficacious way to get home than getting on the Southwest Freeway, right? Because you drive through the streets, it'll take you 40 minutes. You get a Southwest Freeway, it'll take you 40 years, right? It'll take you 3 hours. Okay, efficacy means something that works. So if you have a low self-efficacy in math, if I try math, I'm no good, that's practically a guarantee that you're not going to do it, even if your skills are actually better. Very interesting, isn't it? So if you teach a kid something and the price you pay is for the kid to say, well, I learned it, but I stink at this stuff, it's a terrible thing that you've done. Or if you're a dietitian and you somehow have some regimen where you get people to lose the weight by controlling them and this and that, but they're convinced through it that I really have no personal self-control. There's really no way I could do this ever on my own without that person standing over me. You're lost, because that person's going to come right back and gain all the weight back, which happens to almost all of us, right? So we've been on diets. So this idea about emotions and the person's feeling about his or her own ability to do things is crucial. As we go along, you can already see that we've had a big argument in psychology, right? Skinner thinks feelings and emotions mean nothing. Here Bandura is telling us feelings and emotions are crucial, and we're going to have more arguments. But this particular one is what I call a golden nugget. Everyone agrees on this, no matter what philosophical perspective they come from, and we'll see it as we go through. Skinner is a fanatic about this. He doesn't want people ever to fail. If people engage in the wrong behavior, right, stop doing it. Cut it down into smaller pieces so you can always reinforce, always say right, 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 right. He won't admit it, but that's what he's up to. Everyone will tell you that one of the key to effective achievement is a feeling about yourself that I can do this. The difference between a frustration and a challenge is the person's own feeling about self. We'll see this again with Maslow, we'll see this with Erickson, we'll see this with Piaget. They all agree, even though they come from very different places and call them very different things. Okay? Now, there are some problems with this theory, and I'm going to get into them. Okay? Here's the problem. You know, it sounds nice. Oh, boy. The problem of circularity of the term reinforcement is even worse for Bandura than it is for Skinner. Okay? The fact that you never know what is a reinforcement until you try. Skinner can say, come back to me now. Skinner say, okay, keep trying. This works fine. Okay? You like Mounds bars? Like coconuts? You like Mounds bars? Who likes Mounds bars? Who likes coconuts? Who likes coconuts? Raise your hand. Nobody here likes the taste of coconuts? Who likes the taste of coconuts? Who hates it like poison? Oh, boy, usually it's 50-50. Who likes it? All right, so here we are. Can you get the camera over here? I'm sure you can. So here we are. Here we go. Go ahead. Push it down.
Rocky.
Here's Rocky. I say, Rocky, I got my big bag of candy here, Mounds bars. I say, okay, Rocky, how much is 2 times 2?
4.
All right, here, Rocky, take the Mounds bar. No. Rip it open, eat it. Who
Thanks.
else likes it? Good, good. We even said thank you. Who else likes it? Okay, here we go. Probably can't get into this corner. Can you get the camera over here? Sure we can. What a great place. Name?
Jessica.
What?
Jessica.
Jessica. How much is 2 times 2, Jessica? How much is 2 times 3? Let's make it tougher.
2 times 3.
Yeah.
6.
All right, here's the Mounds bar. Rip it open. I want to see you eat it. You were such a good girl. Right, it's okay. If you're going to give me the right answer, I'm going to make you eat a Mounds bar. Ready? How do you feel about Mounds bars? Okay, ready? Name?
Shazia.
Again?
Shazia.
Shazia. Ready, Shazia? I'm going to give you 2 because you're going to... How much is 2 times 2? Going to have to eat this Mounds bar if you get it right. 5. There you go. Right? You really hate them, don't you? People who hate coconuts hate them. Okay? So all of a sudden, what I've done is I vicariously punished Shazia for giving the right answer. She said, are you nuts? I give the right answer to these multiplication problems. I'm going to make me eat this Mounds bar. The thought of it is horrifying to you, isn't it? You're just going like this, yeah. I mean, how many people hate coconuts that much that just the thought of eating it is just horrifying to you? Yeah. We got a bunch of people here, right? Usually it's 50-50. Not too many people are neutral about coconuts, right? I couldn't believe it when I found that out. So you have to be careful. You never know when I'm vicariously reinforcing Rocky and Jessica, what I'm doing to the rest of you. I'm teaching Shazia, never give a right answer to a multiplication problem. And I'm also teaching you hate them too, right? Who hates them again? Okay, okay. 5 people here are learning never give the right answer to a multiplication problem because he's going to make me eat those horrible Mounds bars. I'll give you an example. You remember recess? Was there anybody who hated recess? Look at this. We've got 4. I hated recess in April, in the spring, right? Where I grew up, it snowed and snowed and snowed and snowed and snowed and snowed and melted and snowed and melted and snowed and melted. You go outside in April, it's just mud. For some reason, I hated mud, right? The teacher said, okay, everybody be quiet. We'll have a 10 extra minutes of recess. It's with all I could do to keep them going like this. Right? The only reason I knew the other kids would kill me, there'd be a punishment. But so we're giving If you'll do this, the whole class will get recess, and here are 4 people saying, I'm not doing that. I don't want to go outside. Why did you hate recess? I hated them. Why did you hate recess?
Cold outside.
Cold.
In the winter.
Where? Yeah, in the winters. Yeah, I hated it because of winter. Why did you hate it?
I had to wear black patent leather shoes and the sun baked my feet.
Yeah, there you go. See, you never know. But the other kids liked it, right? They didn't seem to mind it. So you never know. You got chaos here. I think I'm vicariously reinforcing everybody. I'm vicariously punishing somebody. Oh, here are 2 baseball tickets if you'll do the work. I just saw the look on Dane's face. I think I got better things to do than this work. Push it down, right? Push it down and say it again.
How much are they worth? I'll scalp them.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. I mean, so it just depends. You wouldn't do it for 2 World Series tickets if I told you can't sell them? You go ahead, say it.
You couldn't make me go to a World
How
Series.
many people can't think of too many things they wouldn't do if they could get 2 tickets to the World Series? Right? See, there are a few of us, oh, that's a big mistake. So you never know. And because here, let's get back here, because it's always vicarious, you don't know. The problem is worse because you don't know what you're doing. You think, oh, I think it's very efficient. I'm reinforcing one person, I'm reinforcing everybody else. But in fact, I'm reinforcing one person. That's reinforcing 1/3 of the class. It's punishing another 1/3 of the class. The other 1/3 of the class doesn't care. Okay? Because you can never know how the observer is reacting to what he or she sees. There's a he day, right? He or she sees. What is reinforcing for the person with whom you are directly acting may be a punishment or a nothing to the observer. You can never tell. It's a real problem. And all of us has been through times where the teacher is doing stuff that was supposed to be a punishment. You know, like my son, I have to say this one about my son. One day, he's 10 years old. Come back to me. We're driving down the street. And I stopped, and it was at night. I remember bringing him back from some school activity. It was dark already, and there's a guy sitting in the old days, in the booths, in the people. I guess they still have those in the gas stations. And there's one person sitting behind in the plastic see-through booth collecting the money. And it was a night, nobody was in there. The guy's sitting in there watching TV, and he turns around and he said, "Boy, I'd love to have a job like that." I said, "What?" He said, yeah. I said, "Why?" He said, "You just sit, it's quiet. You watch television, nobody bothers you. Then if you want to, you can read a book, or you can just think." By the way, he's a stand-up comic today, right? But you'd be surprised. Those guys, all of them, they're very quiet, a lot of them. Go into the quote green room and just sit. I went in there, there were 3 of them. They were just sitting, getting ready, psyching up, right? So he went to a parochial school, private parochial school, but one day he hears about timeout rooms. Public school. He says, "Oh, man, I wish we had those in our school. So all you have to do is talk out of turn and you get 15 minutes by yourself alone?" He said, "Man, I'd be talking all the time." Right? There was nothing more rewarding to him than just being able to sit by himself for, 10 or 15 minutes. Right? So you think it's a punishment, but it's not. So you can never tell. Okay? Okay, something else. When naturally occurring behaviors are reinforced, they tend to be extinguished if reinforcement is withdrawn. I'll just explain this to you. If you are naturally reinforcing if there's a behavior that naturally occurs, and you begin reinforcing it, then it won't occur naturally anymore. Okay? When we come next time, we'll do this, we'll finish Vygotsky. I'll explain to you why that happens. Of course, come back to me. For Skinner, there's no reason to reinforce a behavior that naturally occurs. Go to the next behavior. But for Bandura, because of vicarious learning, there is a reason to do that, and it has a very negative effect. Okay, we'll talk about that next time.